My name is Jill Eisberg, and I'm the Senior Literacy Specialist at Lee & Low Books. Lee & Low Books is the largest children's book publisher specializing in diversity and multiculturalism. It is and has been the mission of Lee & Low Books for the past 25 years to publish diverse stories that all children can enjoy. Before we get started, a bit about the platform. I'll be moderating today with 4 panelists: Carolyn Vidmar from Spanish Playground, Monica Oliveira from MommyMaestra, professional storyteller and educator Susan K. Cody, and Clara Tash from American Immigration Council. For each calling in, and you will know who is speaking by seeing a white bar outline their screen, as you see for mine right now. If you have any questions, please type them into the question box on the GoToWebinar control panel, and we'll address them in the Q&A. You should also see 5 documents with resources from each organization in the control panel for you to download and keep. These will be available on the Lee & Low website and from each organization. I'll send them out to all registrants along with the certificate of completion at the end of the webinar. If you'd like to tweet the conversation during the webinar or continue the conversation afterwards, please tweet us using #TeachDia and use any of the Twitter handles listed here. All right, what is this webinar about? We've brought these panelists together today to discuss El Día de los Niños, El Día de los Libros, as it celebrates the 20th anniversary this April 30th. Dia is a celebration of childhood, literacy, storytelling, multiculturalism, and linguistic diversity. It was started in 1996 under the leadership of author Pat Mora, and as I mentioned, it turns 20. Dia is supported by the Association for Library Service to Children, a division of the American Library Association, and Reforma, an affiliate of the American Library Association that provides library services to Latinos and a Spanish-speaking community. Libraries have been major partners, advocates, and welcoming spaces for Dia celebrations over the past 20 years. We wanted to bring this group of parents, teachers, librarian, and advocates together today to discuss what role schools can play in Dia to bring the celebration and mindset to even more families. Before doing so, I want to have each of our panelists introduce themselves, talk about what they do, and the organizations that they're representing today. Claire, would you start by introducing yourself, what you do in your organization?
Sure. I'm Clara Tash. I'm the Senior Manager of Education here at the American Immigration Council. The Council is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization. We've been around for over 25 years and based here in Washington, D.C. We have a legal team, a policy team, and an exchange program, along with the education program. And we work to strengthen America by honoring our immigration policy, our immigration history, and shaping how Americans think and act toward immigration now and in the future. So our motto is honoring our immigrant past and shaping our immigrant future. And here at the education team, we're providing lessons and resources and many activities for teachers, advocates, community leaders, and students, making this issue relevant in the classroom and in your communities. We're helping educators navigate the sometimes difficult issues that can be polarizing and sometimes the negative rhetoric that comes out of these issues. We're making sure that communities are empowered to speak about these issues. We use history to make connections, and we encourage students to think critically about these issues. So our resources, we'll tell you more about those later.
Susan, would you introduce yourself and what you currently are doing?
Yes, my name is Susan Cody. I am a professional storyteller. I have been in this capacity for about 20 years. I'm also a former classroom teacher with 20 years experience. And I also wear another hat right now as the education director for an organization called Chords of Courage, where we bring storytelling in the form of music composition into area schools. And our mission is to change the conversation from the demoralizing and cynical to the hopeful and inspirational, one song at a time.
Thank you. Carolyn, would you introduce yourself and what you're currently doing in your organization?
Absolutely. I'm Carolyn. I'm a public librarian in Wisconsin, and I'm the summer reading program coordinator for Spanish Playground, which is a website that provides resources for teaching Spanish to children. And I recently graduated from the University of Wisconsin-Madison with my library degree, and where I worked in public libraries and at the Cooperative Children's Book Center in Madison, Wisconsin.
Wonderful. And Monica, would you introduce yourself and what you're currently doing in your organization?
Sure. So my name is Monica Olivera, and I am a homeschooling mother of two and a freelance education writer. My main site is MommyMaestra.com, and it helps Hispanic parents get more involved in their children's education by providing resources, tips, and opportunities. It's for homeschoolers as well as parents who simply just want to get more involved in their kids' education. And I'm also the co-founder of Latinas for Latino Lit and the content creator of the Latino Children's Summer Reading Program, which was the first national online program designed specifically for Latino families.
Wonderful. All right, now we're going to get started on some of our questions. The first one will be for Monica from MommyMaestra. What are some of the misconceptions about DIA?
So I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that Dia is a Latino holiday. And in fact, you know, Children's Day is something that's been around for a very long time. It was first proclaimed by the World Conference for the Well-Being of Children back in 1925. And then it was established universally in 1954. There's countries all over the world that celebrate Children's Day, from Sri Lanka to New Zealand to Japan. They celebrate them at different times of the year. Mexico, some people think that it's strictly a Mexican holiday, and Mexico does have a Children's Day. It provided the inspiration for Pat Mora, who's the one who came up with it here in the United States. In Mexico, they do celebrate it on April 30th, just like we do now here. But the reality is that I think Children's Day, or Dia de los Niños, because it has a Spanish title, it's actually for everybody. So it's a very multicultural holiday. It's really here to celebrate all children of all cultures.
Claire from American Immigration Council, can you also address what some of the misconceptions are about DIA?
Sure. So like Monica said, it's not a Hispanic Latino event. It also doesn't just have to be one day. You know, Dia means day, but this types of activities can culminate on that day, but these activities can happen throughout the year, uniting through books, stories, other literacy activities. These events don't have to be elaborate. I think a misconception is that it has to be something huge. It really doesn't have to be. And I think, like Monica said, you know, this is a day to really celebrate kids. It's a day where kids have voice, but I think it's kids of all ages. So this brings in that, you know, aspect of, you know, all ages and all backgrounds, making sure that all identities are in a safe atmosphere. And diversity also includes homelessness, you know, people with different migration stories, differences in abilities, whether mental or physical, differences in religion, and so on.
DIA celebrations seem popularized at public libraries and community centers. Why do we not see many DIA celebrations at schools? What challenges may schools have?
So I think that there's quite a few things. First of all, Common Core, which is now very popular in schools, has a very there's a big focus on Common Core. So a lot of teachers may not feel that they have the opportunity or the materials to branch out and explore other holidays such as Dia. They may have a very strict curriculum that they need to adhere to, and they can't branch out. I think time is also a big problem, because teachers have to have very structured and very limited, in fact, time with their students. So they may not feel that they have enough time to put together a celebration, especially when you tie that into the misconception that it has to be something really big. Materials, you know, they may not be able to find or know what materials they need, as well as budget. I think budget is a big thing for teachers. They may think that they need to spend a lot of money in order to have a celebration. And then I think maybe the last or most important thing might be that there is a real lack of school librarians who might be more familiar with it and might be more likely to push the whole idea of celebrating books and children together, and they often have the resources like the books that the teachers would need in order to put together a celebration.
Susan, why do you think schools are ideal places for DIA celebrations? What are the strengths of a school community for DIA?
Well, first of all, there's a lot of people joined together in one place. So you have the audience right there. There's also a multicultural aspect usually in most schools, so it lends itself to literacy activities and storytelling across cultures and within cultures. Classroom teachers, I think, are very interested in doing new and exciting things with their kids, and I understand what Monica's saying about Common Core, because that does seem to be an obstacle because everyone wants to teach to the test. But I think that we can include these very exciting activities because they are literacy based and they are Common Core aligned if you really look at them closely enough. So I think that schools and teachers and principals need to be aware that these things can be done and they would be very beneficial for the schools.
Monica, what's necessary for a successful DIA celebration?
So one of the biggest things, I think, is having an advocate for the DIA celebration. You need an enlightened, educated, and prepared teacher who is willing to put it together and put forth the effort to create it for their students. I also think that parents are a key element to having a successful DIA celebration because they can provide so many materials and knowledge, their own background, to help the children explore their own heritage and share it with each other. I think school support as well. A lot of schools may not have the people who are in the position to support the teachers who are interested in putting together the celebrations. So I think the biggest one, honestly, is just to have a teacher who's willing to do it, and some books and some children who are willing to learn.
And Susan, what do you think is necessary for successful DIA celebration?
Well, I would say cooperation, participation, and communication. So first, getting the people on board to cooperate to make it happen, and then communicate to the school community that it is going to happen and generate a lot of excitement, and that can happen with the school administrators and the teachers. And then to participate and have these wonderful activities, and it doesn't have to cost a lot of money.
Yes, we are definitely going to address that too. Claire, what might a DIA celebration look like? Can you share, a DIA celebration at a school that you were either a part of or you saw executed particularly well? Are there any tips that could be applied to other schools?
Sure. So I think as long as children are recognized and given kind of a part of this program and, to show that they're a greater part of society, it's a success. So really, showing that the community is accepting and loving and appreciating of these children, these activities should just provoke curiosity and learning about one another, about themselves. Again, I'm going to put in, all ages, this intergenerationality. I think the most important thing is to make sure that the entire community plays a role in this. So that means parents, grandparents, teachers, administrators, the surrounding community. I think that the success I've seen is when retirees or high school students come in and read to students or create, short stories or tell stories. These activities can take many forms. It can be in one classroom, it can be in a stadium, it could be in a park, or it can be on a playground. But again, including members of the community, Another success I've seen is when communities do book drives a couple weeks out or months out before DIA, and parents and others, are even libraries, are able to clean up their books and donate them, and then on the day students can take the books that they want to learn from. I think also successes I've seen is having parents engage, sharing games from other countries, songs. Making these activities multisensory is really important. And for communities that may not have that diversity, Skyping into other communities, having a short chat with a more diverse community. We do have some lessons on telling the family stories, crossing borders, and other activities that we'll get to, but those will have some ideas on how to make these a success.
Excellent. Susan, have you, when you think about any DIA celebrations that you saw executed particularly well, any tips that you think could be applied to other schools?
Definitely. One of the best DIA celebrations we had at my school in Washington, D.C., when I was also a classroom teacher there, was a collaboration between me and our Spanish teacher to do a joint storytelling presentation to the entire school in the auditorium, and it was beautifully decorated. I told a story in English, and my colleague told it in Spanish simultaneously, and all the parents got together from all different Latino countries and came in with a dish, and that they made it home. We had a beautiful table set up, and after the storytelling and some dancing and some fashion show of all the different native costumes from different countries, we had a beautiful celebration of all the cuisine and the food. So it was really the parents and the teachers having something very simple but really spectacular, and it didn't cost anything. And I have also told in schools voluntarily, because I know schools don't have a lot of money, and I think that you would find storytellers also willing to come in for a half an hour and do something just out of the love of telling stories and wanting to share with communities that really can't afford it. So it doesn't have to cost a lot, and with little you can gain so much.
Claire, why is it important to consider linguistic and cultural diversity in planning a DIA celebration?
Right. So whether a school is homogenous or extremely diverse, every community is able to share their own stories. So again, involving grandparents, looking at family stories is a great way to start. Making sure that you have all the different languages explored. You can do that together. Again, this doesn't have to be in one day. You can have these books in the classroom. You can really kind of use DIA and the activities to create pathways. Everyone in that classroom, in that community, is able to kind of explore their background through these stories. So I think that this also opens up the ability to ask questions about yourself, about one another. It's a place, it's a safe place, a classroom, to to start exposing your students to issues of your community, immigration, diversity, and to look at your own identity as an asset rather than a barrier. I think that at the beginning, too, introducing parents to what you're going to be doing in the classroom and engaging them to participate in this, so that they're not just volunteering for this one day, but giving them time throughout the school year. Start this in September and culminate it in April.
Carolyn, the same question for you. Why is it important to consider linguistic and cultural diversity in planning a DIA celebration?
It's important to recognize and celebrate the experiences of the children in your community or classroom. And I think in libraries, in terms of library programming and book purchasing and things like that. We talk a lot about windows and mirrors. It's important for kids to see themselves reflected in literature and in celebrations, and they also benefit from learning about experiences that aren't their own. So no matter what your community is like, I think everybody can benefit from programming like this.
Susan, you're a professional storyteller. How can storytelling be used in DIA?
Well, everybody loves a good story, and wisdom stories are great vehicle for children to learn values of tolerance and understanding of themselves and others. Stories are a universal form of communication. They just have universal messages that people can understand. Children love to listen to stories, and they love to tell stories too. So using storytelling as a performer and also facilitating workshops where the students also can learn to tell their own stories is a very beneficial endeavor too.
Carolyn, as a public librarian, what do you think public librarians would want educators to know about resources available to them in supporting storytelling, bilingual books, multiculturalism at schools?
We would want educators to know, we do want educators to know that we have resources to support you and to help you support students and families. We're happy to provide book recommendations. We have book lists and provide support in any way that we can. And we hope that educators feel comfortable sending kids and families to the public library, because we know that teachers are pressed for time. Teachers don't have as many resources as they would like, and school librarians have the same problem in a lot of places. So the public library is there to help.
There are many players involved in a school community. I know one of you mentioned that earlier. For a successful DIA celebration, Carolyn, what role can a school librarian play?
A school librarian can provide a lot of things. A school librarian can provide a space, maybe, depending on the school, publicity before the event, outreach to families, letting them know what DIA is, what they're going to be doing, and maybe if there aren't events happening in school, directing families to things happening at community centers or the public library, things like that. Coordinating with those organizations, and if the school is doing programming for DIA, helping kids connect with books and their families connect with books. And I think just talking to families and students in general about why this is important, and helping celebrate books, because books and kids, that's really what it's all about.
So for a successful DIA celebration, Monica, what role can parents specifically are in a unique position to play?
So I think one of the big things is discussing or starting discussions at home and talking about children's and their culture, their family heritage, trying to create that sense of a literacy environment at home is really important. But discussions, I think helping the students plan presentations, for example. I know that some teachers will have all of the students give up and give a little presentation talking about what their family life is like or their family heritage. So parents can wind up providing materials. You know, they can talk to their children and tell them the history, the unique history. As Sue said, it's the storytelling, because I know that with my own kids, that when I tell them stories about our relatives, or when my mother comes to visit and, you know, grandma's telling them stories about people she knew or her grandmother, those are the things that really engage my kids, and they're the ones that get them really excited about sharing with everyone else. You know, we might have other people come to visit, and my kids are telling me, tell them about the story about, you know, when your great-grandmother had a restaurant, or tell them the story about when they used to go down to Mexico. So they want to hear those stories, and getting them excited about their own family history helps the kids to have confidence. And instilling confidence in our children is one of the greatest things that a parent can do. It helps them not only to be proud of themselves, but it also helps them in their academic life. So I think having those discussions at home, giving them the support through materials. You know, we had mentioned, or I think Sue mentioned, about how some parents would cook up different dishes and bring them to the school for everyone to participate in. Those are the types of things that are really important. Parents just have to be engaged, and they have to take on an active role in their students' education, and I think all of those really help them to have, or help the teachers to have a successful Dia celebration.
Now, for a successful Dia celebration, Susan, what role can a teacher or administrator play?
Well, administrators have to be on board and excited about the prospect of having it in the first place, and they are sort of the key person to generate the excitement and sort of get it going initially. Has to be ready to make announcements and put things out online, and you know, delegate to somebody to do these different tasks to publicize the event. Teachers also just need to be excited and understand that it's not difficult to do, that it can be even integrated into the curriculum in some sort of literacy capacity, and just to celebrate diversity, but also our commonalities. When I tell a story and I pick a story from maybe a certain culture, I like to highlight that culture, but more importantly, show that we are all the same, that we have a common humanity, and I think that's what stories really show children, that we can have that pride and confidence in where we came from and from our own cultures, but really when they listen to multiple stories from different cultures, they normally have a familiar theme, and it shows that we do have so much more in common than we might have thought, and I think that's a very valuable part of storytelling. So to get back to your question about teachers, I just think that they need to understand that it's a very simple thing to do, and it's really helpful, and they can just connect with each other and generate the excitement among themselves and among students.
Monica, this is a very busy time of year for schools. You know, there's state assessments coming up, or they just passed. You know, school year is wrapping up. There's National Poetry Month, National Jazz Month. Why is it valuable for schools to celebrate Dia now?
Well, I love the fact that Dia culminates on April 30th, because, at least in this country, because that's not too far away from Mother's Day and Father's Day, which is the following month. So, you know, in a way, we have those all in a row. We have a Children's Day that celebrates children right around April 30th. That's just before things get really hectic in school in May, because, as you mentioned, I mean, things are already starting to get busy. Teachers are already thinking about exams and how to wrap things up. And this is an opportunity, especially when it starts getting stressful, for the kids to just let off some steam and relax and celebrate themselves. So April 30th is a really great time, but really it could happen at any time of the year. April 30th does tend to be very convenient, I think, especially in relation to Mother's Day and Father's Day.
I like it. Carolyn, funding is limited. How can schools host or celebrate a Dia celebration on a small to negligible budget?
Yes, funding is very limited, but activities can be book-centered, I think, without requiring many materials. In our toolkit, for example, we put together 2 printable activities, a bilingual scavenger hunt, and a activity called One Story, Two Languages, and a couple other activities. that require very little prep. I especially like the beanbag toss idea of arranging books on the floor and tossing a beanbag and then reading the title of the book wherever the beanbag lands. But I think without very much funding, teachers and educators and school librarians can also tap into resources in your community, ask kids, parents, and other teachers to do read-alouds, use your local library. I sound like a broken record. But check out books, get recommendations, talk to parents about doing the same thing so they can continue the celebration at home. But you could host a Dia celebration in the classroom for free by checking out books from the library. And teachers could also go about asking for donations of books if they wanted to give out books as a prize. Totally not necessary, but definitely would be awesome to get a book as a prize. And there are so many things that teachers can do just with books. I think we've already talked about a bunch of them, but there are more in our toolkit, and using books and things that you already have in your classroom, I think you could host an awesome celebration.
Monica, same question about funding that's limited. How can schools host or create a Dia celebration with a very limited budget?
So Carolyn's absolutely right. You can have a Dia celebration absolutely for free. One of the things you could do is download the packet that we have available that's for free for teachers, and it includes various activities and reading lists. I know that online you can find reading lists for Dia in a lot of different places. The other thing you can do also is go to YouTube or TeacherTube and look for interviews of authors. There's also a lot of videos where authors actually do read-alouds of their own books. So that's something that's pretty exciting too. I think I would consider doing. Pinterest is just a wealth of ideas. I know some people just are like, Pinterest, it's got too much, it's sensory overload. But, if you do work it right, you can find some incredible resources and materials for free on there, and they just have some really clever ideas. So yeah, you could definitely look on there. Arts and crafts, using the materials that you already have in your schoolroom, even songs. If you go to the official Dia website, that's put on by the American Library Association, they have the toolkit. They have a lot of resources, including songs and printable activities that you can use. But again, I would also recommend just downloading the packet that we have available with this webinar.
And Susan, you've spoken also about how, funding can be very limited at schools. Any tips or suggestions on how a school can host or create a Dia celebration?
Absolutely. An assembly, as I was talking about before, with storytelling, and other storytellers might come for free. I think that's very reasonable and doable. Having the older kids go down to the younger kids' classrooms to read to them would be a nice activity. Having grandparents come in or parents coming in and telling the stories that Monica was talking about that her children love to hear would be a great community activity for everyone to learn about everybody else's families and interesting stories, and they can start generating their own stories from that. Coming in with food. Everybody loves food. Everybody loves good food, and a lot of these homemade recipes are fantastic. So it doesn't take a lot. It just takes imagination, creativity, and the willingness to make the time to create a splendid event.
Excellent. I'm even seeing from our chat box that there's some suggestions of possibly combining it with other events that the school might have, whether it's a field day or to be able to really extend those resources. I love it. Claire, what strategies have you seen in celebrating, engaging, and incorporating English language learners and their parents who may not speak English at home?
Right. So as a former teacher, one thing I always did was make sure that parents felt welcome in the classroom from day one. Just making them feel a part of their learning and a part of the classroom. So I would have the students create invitations, and they could write them, they could draw them. Nowadays, it was a long time ago when I taught, but nowadays they could actually do a video invitation, inviting their parents to come in and maybe just run a morning meeting, say hello in their language that they speak at home, maybe bring books, photo albums, a montage, or something that talks about their heritage. One thing we also always did was have student-created work. So one way to create material for your DIA is to have the students write it themselves. Nowadays they can do digital stories as well. Always have kind of small activities that connect the parents, because when you pull the parents in from the beginning, it engages them not just learning in the classroom, but learning at home. I think as Monica had said before, and that's a really important part, especially with our English language learners, that they feel pride about their heritage, but they you know, are connecting within the community as well. Also, making sure that, you know, these activities are laying out you know, respectful, rigorous classroom environments, making sure that, you know, if you do a morning meeting, you know, if the students haven't heard that language, you know, have the map, talk about that, you know, write it down and have it in the classroom. Also, you know, these activities have a kind of record of who visited, refer back to that, and then when you culminate your activities in a DIA, you can have, you know, a big exploratorium or exhibit of what your class did that day and have other students learn from what you did.
And Monica, you know, what strategies have you seen in celebrating, engaging, and incorporating English language learners as well as, you know, bilingual families and multilingual families?
So Claire's absolutely right that engaging the parents is crucial. I think honestly that it's really imperative that there be bilingual materials available. You know, we focus a lot on Spanish, or I do because of my Latino heritage. The reality is a lot of Latino parents may not feel 100% comfortable reading English or doing activities that are in English. So that's why having bilingual books are really important, especially when you get full text in both English and Spanish. They're more engaged and more likely to read to their children in their native language. I also think that having someone who's willing to take the time to reach out to parents and engage them is really important. I would also say, actually, along the lines of bilingual materials, even culturally infused materials, even if they're not in the native language of the English language learner, if it's English only, still having those images and references to traditions that are you know, associated with their own culture that they are familiar with are important. But at the same time, we have to be careful to avoid stereotypes. We have to make the effort to learn about the children that are in your classroom, because we have, you know, you can't just do, you know, Mexican, for example. You can't just do Mexican cultural images or traditions and themes, because, you know, Latinos are so diverse. You know, we have Cubans and Puerto Ricans, you know, Venezuelans, and just from all over the place. So you have to be very inclusive and cognizant of who those students are that are in your classroom, and make sure that the content that you're providing for them, that you want them to relate to, is something that they actually can relate to. So I would say bilingual materials for sure, as well as someone who's willing to reach out to the parents, you know, making that step to communicate with them directly, because a lot of parents really feel intimidated, especially when you go to another country, or if you're still learning the language, you may not feel that, you know, you're not qualified to be getting involved in your kids' education, because you think the school knows best, and you really can't provide any kind of positive contribution to that. But the reality is that, you know, we know that those parents, if they're involved, are going to make their child's learning they're just going to really improve it dramatically. They're the key to academic success.
Mm. Carolyn, what should DIA organizers consider in selecting the right book or books for the event or celebration across the month?
Well, Monica just had some great points about books, but I think some things that are really important are having a variety of levels and genres available. So having board books, picture books, early readers, nonfiction, poetry, anything that would resonate with kids. Choosing books that kids love and identify with. I think it's okay to recommend some classics or very popular books. Making sure, obviously, that there are multicultural books available, and looking for books in languages other than English and bilingual books. I love the points about the books with text in 2 different languages facing each other. Those are awesome. Including books about traditions set in different countries and folk tales from different countries. And then also looking for books that are good stories with diverse characters that aren't necessarily about food or traditions. I think we see a lot of those, and it's important to look for books that reflect lots of experiences and more nuanced experiences as well. And I think with the push for diverse books lately, we're seeing even more books like that, and that's awesome. And just in general, having lots of different books and not getting too hung up on looking for the one right book, because it's more about the right book for the right child at the right time. And so the more different things you can have, the better.
Claire, where do you think, what should we consider in selecting the right book or books for the event?
Right. So I know Lee and Lowe has great lists, and we also have reviews. I'm sure that in the resources that Carolyn and Monica have also offered some great titles. I like books that discuss historic events so that you can look back in, time, what was happening to immigrants in different periods of time. I think that really helps students put things into perspective. I also like books that show how being an activist can promote change, really being brave and putting yourself out there. Selecting books that have female heroes. I think that's a kind of a newer genre. There's not a lot out there. Again, books that are in different languages, are bilingual, and even maybe if you don't have a speaker of that language in the class, seeing different alphabets and different languages can be really fascinating and evoke curiosity in learners. Books with different types of images. Again, I love books that are created by your own students and by your own community. I love the idea that Monica had about parents, just Mother's Day and Father's Day, telling those family stories. We have some lessons that help you do that. Also, April is Poetry Month. Books about poetry written by diverse authors I think is important to have. One thing I also did in my class was to make sure to have multimedia, things like National Geographic clips. I know that you can kind of gather enough multimedia so that kids who've never heard of that country or seen pictures of a country can go there virtually through multimedia, making sure those things are available, having art from different cultures, music from different cultures. And again, really trying to show reality and to steer kids away from learning from, stereotypical images. And one thing that always sticks in my mind, being from Mexico, is one of my students asking if there were donkeys and chickens, in the road. And, I was a little bit shocked, but then I realized, they were 7 years old and all they had seen was books with chickens and donkeys in the road. So really trying to bring real life images. Another thing that I really like, other than books, is to, when you do have parents come and visit, if you can videotape them reading those books and then have a video library in your classroom or community, that helps, you know, to children who have access to that book to hear it again and again in a different language, expose them to different languages and cultures.
Carolyn, where can I find more information about DIA, creating a DIA celebration at my school, or finding events nearby?
Our toolkit has awesome resources. And I think someone mentioned this, but the American Library Association has a resource guide for DIA that is 78 pages long. You can download it. It has coloring sheets, program ideas, tons of other resources. And then a website that I really like for library programming and library ideas is Storytime Underground, and it's storytimeunderground.org. It's not just about storytime, it's for anyone working with books and literacy, but they have an archive of the American Library Association's DIA get-together that they just posted a couple months ago, and I looked at it this week and thought it was really helpful. And they also have a public Facebook group which is searchable, so you can search DIA and see all DIA-related posts and ideas that people have done and questions that people are asking, and I think that could be really helpful.
Great, great. Claire, where can we find more information about DIA, creating a DIA event at my school, or finding events nearby?
Right. So in finding events nearby, I think it's important to just be tapped into your community. Although the ALA resource is really great and you can put your zip code in, I put mine in and noticed that in my community where we have a really robust DIA, it's not listed. But make sure that, you know, you're connected to listservs and places of worship, ethnic community centers, chambers of commerce sometimes help to sponsor the DIA events. And just be an advocate. You know, if it's not happening in your community, just plant that seed. Start in one classroom and watch it grow.
Monica, where can I find more information about DIA, creating a DIA at my school, or events nearby?
Okay, so I wrote some down, so I'm just going to, that way I wouldn't forget anything. But I have, the main one is going to be dia.ala.org. That's the one that Carolyn referenced earlier. That's the one that has so much information and toolkits. You can go to patmora.com. She has a whole section on her site that's dedicated to DIA, which makes sense since she's the one who pretty much started it in this country. TexasDIA.org also has some. Technically that site, they're not adding any more new things to it, but they still have resources on it, so they're going to leave it up and live. And then I would say PBS Learning Media has information, not specifically about DIA, but it has information about culture and different cultures from around the world. So those are really that's a wonderful resource for parents who are, or teachers who are looking to explore maybe the cultures of the students that are within their classrooms. They can find a lot of information there as well as activities. And then of course you can go to Lee and Low and you can find the information that we have available today. And then on my side I also have on MommyMaestra.com I have some resources available and dedicated to DIA as well.
Thank you. These have been some great tips and strategies. I want to transition now to some of the questions from our audience, and then I'll try to direct these questions to each panelist, but if you feel moved to speak, please jump in and ask them as well. I think we kind of spoke about this a little bit, but how is DIA welcoming other nationalities, reaching out to debunk the Latino-Latina stereotype? I don't know if Claire or Monica would want to address that again or add anything else to it?
I guess in some communities, especially those that, you know, may not be diverse, they will Skype in with another class, and sometimes we, you know, at the council, we have helped to facilitate that at times. It might not be a DIA-specific event, but it's an event that helps to explore other cultures. I think that debunking that myth is if you create your activities to reflect your community. Right off the bat, you are taking it away from that stereotype of being a Latino day to a day about all of the multiple identities of your individuals in your school and your school at large.
Yeah, I would also say that Pat Mora has worked very hard, I think, to make it very inclusive and to celebrate children of all cultures. In fact, her book that is dedicated to Dia, Book Fiesta, really celebrates all children of all cultures. So that if you don't have Book Fiesta, that is really such a visually, it's absolutely beautiful for sure with Rafael Lopez's art. But it's something that you can use in your classroom to really engage and represent, you know, all of your students. So I think between those two, that's how we've reached out.
One of the questions that I've seen, and please speak on whoever feels motivated and moved to, any tips specifically on engaging fathers and more male role models in Dia celebrations at schools?
So I would recommend, you know, a lot of times it's reaching out into the community and asking for guest speakers. Having fathers come, send them a special invitation. I love the idea, I think, Clara, that you had about having the children write their own invitations to send to parents, and having, I mean, you know, having that come from your own child and inviting you to come and speak at a Dia celebration is one way to engage fathers. Also the books that you choose. You know, a lot of times I think men might not think that children's books are something that they really want to, you know, read or whatever, but there are certain titles that I think are really fascinating and engaging for fathers especially. I think, you know, there's several. I'm thinking of Latino children's literature, but I'm sure there's many multicultural titles that deal specifically on the relationship between a child and their father. So using those titles and and maybe sending those home with the children to read with their father is something that's pretty special and a way to engage them.
Yeah, I think also, you know, working with retirees, volunteers that will come into the class, engaging immigrant business owners, which some may be male, to talk about, you know, their story and then setting up the business and so on and so forth could be fascinating. And also, Monica reminded me, we've done lessons around sports, immigrants in sports, whether baseball or, you know, other sports, and that always makes the dads really excited about talking about diversity.
Yeah, like there's a book called Pelé, you know, the king of soccer, and that by Monica Brown. That's awesome. That I think a lot of dads would really enjoy.
And food. I say and food. You can always get the dads in if you bring food.
All right, one of the other questions that I saw, as a librarian, we can incorporate Dia into programming, but how do we get districts on board to present it to administrators and influence district-wide participation?
I'm sorry, were you addressing me?
That would be great, Susan, but really anyone who feels moved of how school librarians or public librarians can engage at the district level.
I think that I think focusing on the fact that this builds and strengthens literacy skills, which are always important, in a way that's fun and inclusive and celebrates diversity. Focusing on the literacy could help you advocate for this, I think.
Yeah, you know, you really need to have a champion for you at the district level. So, you know, building those relationships, that's more of a, you know, a professional relationship that the teachers or the school librarians need to develop. And I'm sure that the American Library Association could also provide you with recommendations or the support that you need in order to, you know, engage that, you know, that person who is on the district level that can, make this happen and make it come true.
And I think to just bounce off of that, I think administrators are looking for ways to connect with parents. They're also looking for ways to connect learning from home to school. And, it could take a while to, get to that level, but if you engage them right off the bat, like I'd always invite the principal to our activities throughout the year. And I think that's another reason to start, from day one, because once that activity culminates in the spring and you have a lot to showcase, administrators start to open their eyes.
All right, one more question. How can schools connect student writing to DIA? That can be open to anyone.
Yeah, I'll start off on that. We really advocate student voice. We make sure that students have the vehicles to share their stories. So that's why we put together digital storytelling and telling the family story as activities. These could be published either through art and printed, or you can do it digitally. And then these can be showcased at a DIA event or any other event. And this makes sure that, again, you're getting some of these stories from home and connecting to the classroom. Or for students who aren't ready to share their stories, they can, work with a volunteer to tell the story of someone in their community or a hero or someone else. But that's just one of the ways.
I would also really highly recommend that teachers encourage the students or have the students create a book about themselves, a book of their own lives. They need to be the storyteller of their own life, deciding, maybe where they're going to go in the future, what they're going to do in the future, as well as telling the world about what makes them unique, which is something that we have included in our packet. We have a little worksheet that talks about, it provides an opportunity for the students to write down the things that make them unique themselves, including what they like, the things they like, and what they want other people to know most about them. So creating those stories and having them be the storytellers and they are the authors, that is something that teachers can use in order to strengthen writing skills.
And I'd also like to chime in and say that poetry is also a really great way to connect writing, and using art too, either illustrating a piece of illustrating your poem with a piece of art or a collage, or having the students do illustrated books, and then having a cider house rather than a coffee house. Have a cider house, invite people in, and parents and other classes, and we did that in my classroom, and it was a great success. The kids did the program themselves on the computer and took them home and put up all the chairs, and we had hot cider and cookies, and they all recited their poetry or read them, but some actually recited them, and it was just an incredible experience.
Yeah, it really seems like there's a lot of this multi-sensory that Claire was mentioning earlier about really trying to create that through the entire celebration. I'm going to stop us here, but thank you so much, MommyMaestra, Spanish Playground, American Immigration Council, and Susan. This was a fantastic discussion, and I think people are going to really walk away with a lot of inspiration and strategies and tips. We are going to wrap up here. You will receive another email with the certificate of completion. It should also be here in the handouts. And we hope that you will go through this toolkit from each organization. There's some really great activities and stuff that hopefully then any educator and parent will not have to recreate themselves. This stuff does exist, and we hope that you can take it and adapt it and make it right for your school and for your classroom. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
It was great to be here.